A supermarket. Here we buy almost everything we need in our day-to-day lives. Our decisions on what to buy are based on taste, quality, and price. But what you might not know is that the decisions we make can have a significant impact. Fair trade products vastly improve the working and living conditions of families in developing countries. But how does fair trade even work? Let's take this pack of coffee as an example. Coffee is one of the most important agricultural products on the global market. And it goes on a long journey before it ends up on our store shelves. For the over 30 million coffee farmers around the world, the coffee we buy means a lot of hard work. At the same time, they earn very little money from it. This is due to speculation in financial markets and little to no influence on the pricing of the product, as well as unstable yields caused by changes in temperature and climate. Coffee farmers are powerless in the face of the free market. Fair trade seeks to change that. Fair trade coffee farmers don't work alone. They are members of cooperatives and organized democratically. There are many advantages to this system. The farmers know the true value of their product, which makes it far easier for them to negotiate prices. They have access to credit and are able to learn from each other through a constant exchange of information. A central component of the fair trade system is the minimum price, which is the minimum that farmers' organizations are paid when selling their products through fair trade. Additionally, producer organizations receive the fair trade premium. It is up to the farmers and workers to decide how to use the premium. They might build wells and hospitals, buy better farming equipment, or invest in switching to organic farming. Having a stable income can drastically improve a whole family's opportunities. At the same time, it minimizes the risk of exploitative child labor. The environment benefits from fair trade too. Preserving natural habitats and the climate are key aspects of fair trade. The use of genetically modified organisms is forbidden, and water is used as sparingly as possible. The fair trade standards are the requirements that producers and the businesses who buy their goods have to follow. They are developed by Fair Trade International in consultation with producers, businesses, and all members of the fair trade system. Fair trade producers have a 50% say in all key decisions made. Our independent certification body, FlowCert, checks and monitors that the fair trade standards are being met. Now, back to our pack of coffee. After being harvested and dried, the beans are transported to processors, who roast, prepare, and repackage the coffee for sale. Coffee is the most well-known fair trade product. However, there is a huge range of fair trade products available, from bananas, ice cream, rice, cocoa, sugar, herbs, honey, dried fruits and nuts, to fruit juices, tea and wine. Even flowers, cotton, and sports balls can be fair trade certified. There are over 30,000 fair trade products on sale in more than 125 countries worldwide, in supermarkets, cafes, restaurants, and even trains and planes. So now, it's over to you. In your daily shopping, look for the fair trade mark and choose products that change lives for over 1.5 million farmers and workers worldwide. Fair trade. The power is in your hands.
Hi and welcome back to freesciencelessons.co.uk. By the end of this video, you should be able to describe what's meant by the term carbon footprint. You should then be able to describe ways to reduce emissions of carbon dioxide and methane. We've already seen that carbon dioxide and methane are both greenhouse gases. Human activities are causing these to be released, and that's leading to climate change. Now, the carbon footprint tries to give us an idea of how much something contributes to climate change. I'm showing you the definition of the carbon footprint here, and it's really worth learning this. The carbon footprint is the total amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases emitted over the full life cycle of a product, a service, or an event. Now, there are lots of ways that we can reduce our carbon footprint. We're going to start by looking at how we can reduce our carbon dioxide emissions. A lot of energy is used to heat our homes, and this often comes from burning fossil fuels. By insulating our homes or turning down the heating, we can reduce carbon dioxide emissions. A great deal of carbon dioxide is released by driving cars, and we can reduce this by using public transport such as buses and trains. These release less carbon dioxide per passenger. And finally, a lot of carbon dioxide is produced by generating electricity by burning fossil fuels. We can reduce that by switching to renewable sources of electricity, for example wind power. On a personal level, we can reduce how much electricity we use at home. For example, we can switch to energy-saving light bulbs. We can also turn appliances off at the plug rather than leaving them on standby. Now, there are some problems with these. Firstly, most of these solutions are expensive and people are reluctant to pay. Secondly, in some cases, they're inconvenient. For example, many people prefer the convenience of driving over public transport. Now, as well as carbon dioxide, we also need to reduce emissions of methane, and one of the biggest sources of methane is agriculture. As we saw in a previous video, grazing cattle, such as cows, release methane when they pass wind. One way to reduce that is for people to eat less beef and less dairy products. The problem is that people enjoy eating these and are unlikely to change their diets. Another source of methane are landfills such as this one. We can reduce this by trapping the methane and burning it to produce electricity. That's a good idea because methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. However, trapping and burning methane costs money. Remember, you'll find plenty of questions on the carbon footprint in my revision workbook, and you can get that by clicking on the link above.
Biodiversity is a term that represents the total variety of all life on Earth. That's a big thing to sum up. Thousands of different wild habitats, millions of different species, billions of different individuals, and the trillions of different characteristics they all have. The total biodiversity of our planet is immense. Which is a good thing, because the more biodiversity, the more secure all life on Earth is, including ourselves. Only when life is at its most varied, vigorous, biodiverse, can we hope to thrive. We may not know it, but we need towering forests across 1/3 of the land surface to lock away carbon and keep the climate stable. We need millions of pollinators and billions of soil organisms and megatons of plankton to keep the food we eat in supply. We need strange plants deep in jungles to create our medicines, and coral reefs and mangrove swamps to protect the coasts we depend upon. Our planet's biodiversity provides all the things we need for free. But it will only do so if there's lots of it, and at the moment it's under attack. In the last 50 years, our activities have dramatically reduced biodiversity across the globe. We've snuffed out habitats, reduced populations of wild animals by 60%, and even driven whole species extinct. The number of lions in Africa has dropped by 65%. The number of individual flying insects in Europe has dropped by 75%. The number of bluefin tuna in the Pacific has dropped by 95%. Biodiversity is dropping everywhere and fast. This is catastrophic for nature and therefore ourselves. We talk about climate change a lot, but biodiversity loss is as important an issue. How do we stop this loss of life? How do we ensure that biodiversity, our planet's vital statistic, begins to increase again? In fact, we already know exactly what to do. Follow Our Planet. Visit ourplanet.org.
What is deforestation? Deforestation is the process whereby natural forests are cleared through logging and burning, either to use the growing woods or to replace the area for alternative uses. What is the extent of deforestation? 12 to 15 million hectares of forest are lost each year, the equivalent of 36 football fields per minute.
What are the effects of deforestation? Number 1. Reduced biodiversity. Deforestation and forest degradation can cause biodiversity to decline. When forest cover is removed, wildlife is deprived of habitat and becomes more vulnerable to hunting. Considering that about 80% of the world's documented species can be found in tropical rainforests, deforestation puts at risk a majority of the Earth's biodiversity.
Number 2. Release of greenhouse gas emissions. Deforestation causes 15% of global greenhouse gas releases. One-third of these carbon dioxide emissions are caused by human activity. Number 3. Disrupted water cycles. As a result of deforestation, trees no longer evaporate groundwater, causing the local climate to be drier.
Number 4. Increased soil erosion. Deforestation accelerates rates of soil erosion by increasing runoff and reducing the protection of the soil from tree litter.
Hi guys! Do you have time for a few quick questions? I see you're having a lot of fun, but do you ever stop and think if what you do is sustainable? And do you know what sustainable development means? Sustainable development is to make the world a better place for everyone now without destroying the possibilities for the next generations. If you wonder if something is sustainable, you can ask yourself, can we do this over and over again forever? Sustainable development means that we need to keep three things in mind at once: social progress, economic development, and climate and environment. First of all, we have to take care of our planet. We have many natural ecosystems that must be in balance in order for us to live here. The climate system is one of them. This system ensures that the temperature is correct and that the atmosphere emits exactly the right amount of solar energy. When we emit harmful greenhouse gases, such as CO2, we clog the atmosphere. This changes the temperatures on Earth, which again affects our development. How we produce and use energy is incredibly important. Oil and coal are examples of energy we may run out of. Water, wind, and sun, however, will always be here. Using the lasting sources of energy that renew themselves is good for the planet and can provide jobs for years to come. Economics. Almost everything we develop, buy, and trade starts with nature. The smarter we use our natural resources and the better systems we create for a fair distribution, the more sustainable we are. One way to contribute to a more uneven distribution is to be more aware of what we buy and how it is produced. A football is a good example. It travels far before it reaches the football players. First, the materials are made. Then, they print the logo somewhere else before a third country sews it all together. One single football sees the whole world before it reaches its goal. This journey ties us together. If we are to win the battle for a sustainable future, we have to play with fair rules that applies to everyone. Social progress. We humans are part of nature, but we're also important resources for the world. Just like water, the forest, and the sun, we have minds that can create the strangest and most creative things. But for us to be the best versions of ourselves, there are certain things that must be in order, like having equal opportunities to education, safety, food, and medicine. This provides greater opportunities for us as human beings, but also for the planet. We just have to think in new ways. These three must work together. That is sustainable development. And there is actually a plan for this. All the countries of the United Nations have agreed on a joint plan for sustainable development. But for the plan to work, we need to cooperate, and we need you to be on board. Are you with us?
Recycling helps to create cleaner land, air, and water so that we might be healthier. When you get rid of something, where does it go? Annually, 66% of the trash produced ends up in landfills and incinerators, meaning that only 34% is recycled. But you can make a change. Our collective efforts can have a big impact on our planet. You can reduce your waste in 6 easy steps. Refuse to buy items that are not recyclable or have only a one-time use. Think twice before buying anything. Reduce the number of one-time use or non-recyclable items that you buy. Reuse to make the best of everything by repurposing, upcycling, donating, and repair when it's possible. Recycle. Every bit counts, so start with the basics like paper, aluminum, glass, and plastic bottles. Redeem. Get rewards for your efforts. Sign up for recycling perks and redeem your reward points for freebies and discounts at local businesses. Rebuy. Close the loop by buying items made from recycled materials. Thank you for recycling. Presented by Recycling Perks. Sign up today at recyclingperks.com.
Around the world, renewable energy use is on the rise, and these alternative energy sources could hold the key to combating climate change. What is renewable energy? Renewable energy is generated from sources that naturally replenish themselves and never run out. The most common sources are solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and biomass. Over 80% of the total energy consumed by humans is derived from fossil fuels. However, renewables are the fastest growing source of energy in the world. Renewable energy has many benefits. First, it can combat climate change because it creates no direct greenhouse gas emissions. The only emissions that they produce are indirect, meaning those that result from manufacturing parts, installation, operation, and maintenance. But even those are minimal. Second, renewable energy can decrease pollution and therefore reduce threats to our health. Wind, solar, and hydroelectric systems create no air pollution emissions, and geothermal and biomass energy systems emissions are much lower than non-renewable energy sources. Third, renewable energy is a reliable source of power. Because renewable energy sources are, well, renewable, they will never run out. Once built, renewable facilities cost very little to operate, and the fuel is often free. As a result, renewable energy prices tend to be stable over time. While renewable energy has many advantages, it is not without downsides. It is difficult for renewable energy sources to generate power on the same large scale as fossil fuels. Building wind farms and dams can disrupt wildlife and migration patterns and lead to ecological destruction. Both solar and wind energy are intermittent. They only generate power while the sun is shining or while the wind is blowing. Batteries can store excess energy for later use. However, they are often costly. While renewable energy presents some challenges, it also offers an environmentally friendly alternative to the greenhouse gas emissions and pollution of fossil fuels. And as advances in technology make renewable energy more accessible, affordable, and efficient, an end to climate change could be within our reach.
Hi and welcome back to freesciencelessons.co.uk. By the end of this video, you should be able to describe the main renewable sources of energy. You should then be able to describe the advantages and disadvantages of renewable sources. In the last video, we saw that there were three main uses of energy in the UK. These are for transport, generating electricity, and heating. We saw that burning fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and gas provides a large amount of energy and is reliable. However, this also releases a large amount of carbon dioxide and is contributing to climate change. In this video, we're looking at renewable sources of energy, so let's start by looking at the definition of renewable energy. A renewable energy resource is one that is being or can be replenished as it's used. Now, it's really important that you learn that definition. There are lots of different types of renewable energy resources. Wind power, solar power, and hydroelectric power are all commonly used around the world. We've also got tidal power, biofuels, geothermal, and wave power. We're going to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of each of these forms of renewable energy. So let's start by looking at the two main advantages shared by all types of renewable energy resources. Firstly, they'll never run out, and that's because they're renewable, so they're constantly being replenished. The second big advantage of renewable energy resources is that once they're in place, they do not add any carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, so they do not contribute to climate change. Now, there are some disadvantages to renewable energy. Wind power and solar power are not reliable. Some days are simply not windy, and solar power does not work well on cloudy days. So we cannot rely on solar or wind power to provide all of the UK's energy needs. Now, unlike wind and solar power, hydroelectric power is very reliable. However, habitats are destroyed when dams are built and valleys are flooded. Also, hydroelectricity is only really useful in countries which have got lots of rivers, so it's not really suitable for the United Kingdom. Now, tidal power is extremely reliable. We know that the tide will come in and go out twice a day. At the moment, the UK does not generate any electricity from tidal power. However, there are proposals to build a tidal barrage across the Severn Estuary, but some people argue that this would be harmful to wildlife. Now, wave power is reliable and has huge potential in the UK, which has got an extensive coastline. However, at this stage, wave power is very small scale and experimental. Geothermal energy uses heat from the earth to generate electricity and heat buildings. This is reliable, but it's not really used very much in the United Kingdom. Now, there's one point about all of the renewable resources that we've looked at so far. They all generate electricity. Now, that's potentially a problem, and that's because a lot of energy used in the UK is for transport, including cars. Almost all cars in the UK run on petrol or diesel, and they're fossil fuels. Now, that will change in the future as electric cars become more affordable, but for the moment it does present a problem. That leads us to our final renewable resource, which is biofuel. Biofuels are produced from plant materials. Now, when we burn biofuels, we release carbon dioxide. However, the growing plants took in carbon dioxide, so we're not adding any extra carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Scientists call this carbon neutral. Biofuels are potentially very useful as we can use them to power vehicles such as cars and buses. There is a problem with biofuels. If we use land to grow crops for fuel, that could push up the price of food. Remember that you'll find plenty of questions on renewable energy resources in my Vision workbook, and you can get that by clicking on the link above. Okay, so hopefully now you should be able to describe the main renewable sources of energy. You should then be able to describe the advantages and the disadvantages of renewable sources.